A major takedown of gangs on Long Island. Nearly 40 alleged gang members arrested in a 4-day operation.
We promised in the beginning that we were going to go after the worst of the worst. You're looking at it on the screen. They got out of the car, they tried to rob him, they hacked him with a machete, and the kid ran.
42 gangsters were just dragged from their homes in midnight raids. FBI, ICE, and Nassau County Police destroyed MS-13, Trinitarios, and 18th Street crews that thought they ruled Long Island. By the end of August 2025, hundreds of guns and machetes were in evidence rooms, along with a kid who barely escaped becoming another shallow grave. ICE celebrated this as a surgical strike, but the question is, does this takedown mean the nightmare is over, or did it just provoke a war even bigger than Nassau County can handle? This month saw more and more gangsters brought down by ICE and FBI.
And we begin tonight with 5 suspected MS-13 gang members indicted in connection with 2 different attacks in Nassau County last year.
This drug trafficking conspiracy was very well organized. An imprisoned MS-13 leader, who was also a member of the Mexican mafia, directed the heads of the gang's various cliques, people also known as shot callers, to purchase methamphetamine and distribute it in their neighborhoods on a weekly basis.
But then came the 4-day raid. Between August 13th and 17th, 42 suspected gang members were dragged from their beds, handcuffed, and locked up. The numbers stunned even veterans of gang enforcement.
We are honored to be here with our law enforcement professionals, both in Nassau County and our federal partners, to announce that we have had a very, very important, sweeping pickup of people that were dangerous to our community and the whole region.
Officers called it a spectacle. They lined evidence tables with machetes, loaded firearms, and even miniature axes seized during the raids. This police chief hammered it home.
The gang activity in Nassau County will not be tolerated. You're not going to poison our children with your evil works and your evil doings here in Nassau County.
It was a clear declaration of war against all crime. ICE's presence guaranteed many wouldn't see a courtroom before they were deported. Out of 42 arrested, 33 were immediately flagged for removal proceedings. And an ICE official said something along the lines of, "Remember Trump's promise?"
We promised in the beginning that we were going to go after the worst of the worst. You're looking at it on the screen.
And he's right. These 42 guys weren't kids playing gangster. Ages ranged from 18 to 50, and all of them were hardened veterans of MS-13, the Trinitarios, and the 18th Street Gang. Authorities say these groups brought so much more than think invasions, shootings, stabbings, and trafficking of women and young girls. And yet, officials admitted there was one main reason the crackdown exploded when it did. A machete attack on a boy who wasn't even in a gang, an attack that almost became another shallow grave. That boy's story is where the fear turned into fury. On a hot summer night in Kennedy Park, Hempstead, 4 MS-13 members mistook a young man for a rival, and what followed could have been a murder straight out of 2017's bloodiest headlines.
4 MS-13 guys confronted a kid who suffered from a little cognitive issues. They confronted him as he was an 18th Street gang member. The kid was not.
They slashed him with a machete, literally trying to hack him alive.
They got out of the car, they tried to rob him, they hacked him with a machete, and the kid ran.
He ran with blood oozing out of him, and with 2 MS-13 attackers chasing him on foot and 2 others in a car. Imagine that. The boy barely escaped, making it just in time to the nearest hospital. Within the hour, police were on the MS-13's tail. They later found the car, loaded with masks, radios, and more machetes. That's why this official is connecting it all to the 2017 attack.
I'm going to take you back to 2017 when MS-13 was killing gang members, other gang members, or those who refused to join the gang. And you remember we covered about 9 bodies buried throughout Nassau County, all been hacked up, decapitated, and buried in shallow graves.
Officials say that's exactly what was about to happen again to this innocent kid. And yeah, the MS-13 wasn't on standby in the last 8 years, but this machete attack was the tipping point. Nassau County vowed not to relive the horror of shallow graves scattered across its parks and woods.
This is something that is despicable and will not be tolerated here in Nassau County.
The boy lived, but his blood on the pavement forced an unprecedented response. Here's how it all went down. Days after the attack, Nassau County and feds launched a coordinated 4-day blitz that became one of the largest gang takedowns in county history.
On the 13th, We rolled out our BSO, our CERT, our gang, our COPE, our partners from ICE, and we went out and we did enforcement on the gangs.
Day 1, August 13th, 10 arrests, 4 18th Street members, 2 MS-13, and the rest gang affiliates are put under surveillance. Most were released to ICE custody, but one faced the district court for carrying a loaded firearm. Day 2, August 14th, 14 more arrests, 7 confirmed MS-13.
One arraigned at district court for the loaded firearm that you see here to my right.
ICE scooped up nearly all the others. Day 3, August 15th, 9 more. 5 MS-13 caught during attempted robberies. 2 were arraigned for attempted robbery. The rest were handed to ICE. Day 4, August 17th, 9 arrests, including Trinitarios and 18th Street suspects. 33 of the 42 arrested were transferred directly to ICE. The police called the weapon seized their execution kit. The arrests were dramatic, but even more so was the message.
I believe it's in the thousands of those who have chosen the easier route of self-deportation, and we certainly encourage all illegal aliens who are present within our homeland to take that option. It's a much more pleasant option than being deported, and we will deport you if you're here illegally. That's our intention.
But as you already know, each such arrest comes with a less positive question. What did we miss that it got to this point? Turns out, in this case, the authorities had missed something huge. A fugitive gang leader who had already been deported once, who slipped back into the US, and whose capture tied Nassau County's blood war to a national manhunt. And when agents finally cornered him, they realized this war was far from local. While Nassau County officers were rounding up machete crews, the FBI was closing in on a bigger prize. Joel Vargas Escobar, known on the streets as Mia, had been on the run for 4 years.
A dangerous MS-13 gang leader linked to nearly a dozen murders was arrested on Long Island after 4 years on the run. Joel Vargas Escobar, also known as Momia, was taken into custody.
Federal prosecutors say Momia orchestrated at least 11 killings across Nevada and California as head of the Parkview Clique, a ruthless MS-13 subset based in Las Vegas.
The illegal immigrant from El Salvador allegedly ran the Parkview Clique, an MS-13 subset in Las Vegas, where he reportedly ordered at least 2 killings in 2017.
But there was a problem with this. Sure, his arrest was a victory.
He was finally nabbed through a coordinated effort by the FBI and other federal agencies. FBI Director Kash Patel called it a major win, praising agents for their cross-office collaboration.
But he'd already been deported back in 2018. So why was he back in the States? That's exactly what President Trump uses to justify his illegal immigrant crackdown.
If there was somebody who was apprehended and that individual was going to be released because of the cashless bail laws, we notified ICE. ICE came and picked them up so that they would not continue to do harm to our community.
The charges against Momia are crushing, racketeering, murder in aid of racketeering, and firearms violations. If convicted, he faces a mandatory life sentence. His capture during the same week as Nassau's sweeps was the direct result of police coordination, a signal that local machete gangs and national MS-13 bosses were both in the crosshairs, and no hiding place was safe. But while Escobar's arrest drew headlines, another twist in Washington was about to expose the contradictions at the heart of Trump's crime war.
We arrested 2 individuals who were wanted in Mexico for brutal murders, including murder with a machete and shooting someone to death. And yet those people are considered non-criminals by the media. These are the individuals that we are going after. When we say we're going after the worst of the worst, John, that's not a talking point. That's the fact. 70% of those illegal aliens who have been in this country who we've arrested either have prior criminal convictions or pending criminal charges. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because that doesn't even include those who are wanted for crimes in other countries, such as murder. That doesn't include Interpol notices. That doesn't include gang members, known or suspected terrorists, human rights abusers. So this is the perfect example of who we're going after. Between the 3 of them, 14 counts of attempted murder. Those are not people you want to be your neighbors or be living on American streets.
While machete attacks rattled Long Island, Trump's Justice Department was framing the fight in darker terms.
There are a lot of people in the FBI and also in the Department of Justice who despise Donald Trump, despise us, don't want to be there. We will find them because you have to believe in transparency. You have to believe in honesty. You have to do the right thing. And right now, we're going to root them out. We will find them, and they will no longer be employed. But again, we're starting at every level of the Justice Department, Sean, and getting rid of the worst of the worst. But there are a lot more people that shouldn't be there. But there are a lot of good people who are out there now risking their lives every day making these cases.
Open war against terrorist criminal organizations.
That would be an act of war. Isn't that an issue?
Well, the cartels have been involved in the deaths of far more Americans than all terrorist organizations combined.
MS-13 was among the gangs labeled as terrorists, so the DOJ treated them as enemies of the state, and Trump amplified that message every chance he got. But even as he promised mass arrests and deportations, Trump was entertaining a different kind of shift. In Washington, he hinted at rescheduling marijuana.
We're looking at reclassification, and we'll make a determination over the next few weeks. And that determination hopefully will be the right one. It's a very complicated subject.
If marijuana is moved from Schedule 1, where it sits alongside heroin and LSD, to Schedule 3, it would mark a major shift in federal drug policy. Nicole Skanga explained what that would mean.
It's not the same thing as legalizing it, but it would make it easier for scientists to study the drug's therapeutic uses, reduce some of the criminal penalties for those convicted of marijuana violations, and really start aligning the federal policy with that of a really long list of states.
Irony dripped through the coverage. Thousands still sat in prison on low-level marijuana charges, while machete killers chilled in suburban parks. Federal agents were hunting the worst of the worst, but the system still kept nonviolent offenders trapped. Indiana's governor even admitted the pressure was rising.
And just yesterday, Indiana Governor Mike Braun said the president's move to consider reclassifying could add a little more fuel to the fire for marijuana legalization.
So in the same breath that Trump vowed to dismantle MS-13, he dangled the possibility of loosening federal marijuana policy. This contradiction left critics asking who truly benefited from this war on crime, and that's when attention turned south, where MS-13's shadow war bleeds into everything from morgues to presidencies. To understand why machete fights in Hempstead echo across the hemisphere, you have to follow MS-13 back to its roots.
MS-13 and its rivals like the 18th Street Gang cause chaos and violence across Central America, sometimes at levels similar to active war zone.
In San Pedro Sula, Honduras, the morgue buries dozens of unidentified bodies every month.
This young man had been tied up, gagged, and beaten. The police didn't find any identification on him. So like so many other victims in this city, he will be classified as unknown.
This isn't random, and it's closely tied to the state's policies.
Anguish and anger in Honduras after government officials say a gang slaughtered at least 46 women inside a prison. Smoke billowing from the women's prison just outside of the nation's capital, where officials say members of the Barrio 18 gang opened fire on women in their cells before lighting the prison on fire. This is the charred wreckage, one of the worst prison massacres in recent history. Police say they recovered 18 pistols, an assault rifle, and 2 grenades, all of which were smuggled in.
In the 1990s, U.S. laws deported thousands of gang members back to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. They arrived with U.S. prison tattoos, violent reputations, and quickly dominated local gangs. The result was a generation of violence that made Honduras the most dangerous country on earth outside an actual war zone, and corruption climbed all the way to the presidency. In 2022, former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez was extradited to New York on trafficking charges.
The former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, in the custody of U.S. federal agents, arriving in New York overnight, escorted by drug enforcement agents, and taken to the New York courthouse, where he faces charges for drug trafficking and weapons possessions.
This case should send a clear message to any foreign leader who corruptly abuses their power to support drug cartels.
The ex-president facing a federal judge today in his first court appearance on U.S. soil.
Prosecutors alleged
Hernandez declared that he wanted, and I quote, to stuff the drugs right up the noses of the gringos.
Hernandez's presidency was riddled with controversy, culminating late last year when his brother Juan Antonio Hernandez, a former congressman, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison in the U.S. on drug and weapon charges. That case implicating the former president, federal prosecutors now accusing him of taking drug trafficking money to finance his political campaigns.
MS-13 thrives in this chaos. They don't need to be cartels to be lethal. They extort neighborhoods, traffic women, and control territory like occupying armies. And here's the cruel cycle. Every US crackdown just shifts the violence. Kill crops in one country, and gangs move production. Deport members, and they return stronger. Push down on one side of the balloon, and the pressure explodes on another. That's why the machete attack in Hempstead wasn't just a local scare. It was a symptom of a global war that refuses to end. Nassau officials sent a direct warning to gangsters. The threat wasn't empty either, not with 42 men in prison after just 4 days. Officials also bragged that crime numbers were down after the sweep. They compared it to whack-a-mole. But even as they celebrated, everyone in the room knew gangs thrive on revenge. This police chief admitted,
If you're smart, you'll get out of town, because in Nassau County, you're going to be prosecuted, you're going to be incarcerated, or you're going to be deported. With that, at this time, I want to congratulate, again, our Nassau County Police Commissioner, Pat Ryder, for the outstanding job. We talked about this last week. We saw a little gang activity start up, and we said, we're going to nip it in the bud. We're going to put it to an end immediately. Because remember one thing about these gangs. Once they start fighting amongst themselves, it gets out of control very quickly. And then they have a feeling that they're above the law and they start committing crimes. We won't let that happen in Nassau County.
the arrest sent a message, sure, but the danger was whether that message sparked silence or retaliation. The wider cartel war shows the same pattern. The harder the DEA and Border Patrol push, the harder cartels retaliate. So had Nassau's operation killed MS-13's hold, or just set the stage for the next bloodbath? The machetes may be off the street, but the fear hasn't left Nassau. Parents still watch their kids walking to school, terrified of recruitment, and some communities live in constant fear of the MS-13. Yeah, what that boy suffered was horror movie-like, but these gangs are always acting, causing fear and chaos almost every day. Plus, most times, they recruit teens and plan attacks quietly, so people can't sound the alarm before the worst happens. People remember 2017, when 9 mutilated bodies were dug out of shallow graves. They know those kinds of horrors don't disappear in 4 days of raids. The wider truth looms. Deportations and prosecutions weaken gangs, but they don't erase them. Poverty, corruption, and the war on drugs itself feed their return. This journalist summed it up, and when there's big money on the table, there's gonna be millions partaking. That's the haunting reality. US agents can drag 42 gangsters out of bed in a week, but the same names, or their replacements, will crawl back on US streets. So was Nassau's midnight raid truly a victory, or just another chapter in a forever war that America doesn't know how to end? Please feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth videos like this. Meanwhile, click on any of the cards on your screen right now to watch more of our videos.